translators, but I want to say hello and welcome to our citywide PTO School Committee Candidates Night. My name is Kate Campbell. I'm the co-president of Citywide PTO and one of the moderators. Citywide PTO, also called Quincy Citywide Parents Council, is the link between parents and guardians and the Quincy Public School Administration and the school committee. We do this through monthly meetings where we seek individual input and also input from school PTOs to create a better understanding of Quincy's educational system and to discuss ways to improve the experience of students and parents throughout the district. All QPS parents and guardians, teachers, administrators, and interested community members are welcome to our meetings. I'll be joined tonight by our co-moderators, Heather McDuffis, who is the co-chair of the Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Subcommittee of Citywide PTO, Laura Frio, president of LPAC, English Language Learner Parents Advisory Council, and Ginger McGill, Quincy's Parent Advisory Council to Special Education. And each of those women will ask one question tonight. I want to say thank you to our school committee candidates, Courtney Dios, Doug Gutrow, Emily Lebo, Liberty Schaff, Liz Speakman, and Tina Cahill, who made time to join us tonight to share their vision, thoughts, and ideas. The questions that will be asked of the candidates tonight were sent to us from parents through email, our website, and our Facebook page. The candidates were provided the questions in advance to allow them to have time to formulate thoughtful responses. Each candidate will be given 90 seconds for their opening statement. Ashley Lynch Mahoney, the co-president of Citywide, will sound a bell at 1 minute and say time when your time has elapsed. All candidates will be asked the same question, and each candidate will have 60 to 90 seconds to respond. The format will be as follows. The candidates will be asked to answer each question in alphabetical order by first name. We'll start with a different person for each question to be fair. And for the first question, the order will be Courtney, Doug, Emily, Liberty, Liz, and Tina. And then we'll just move down the line. We'll keep the same pattern. If we ask more than 6 questions, for the remaining questions can be answered by a raise of the hand. And once the 6 questions will be answered, the candidates will have 1.5 minutes of closing statements. At this point, do any of the translators want to mention in their native language that they're available?
Boa noite, meu nome é Moshi Doane e eu estou aqui para traduzir para o idioma português. Se vocês têm alguma pergunta, podem escrever no chat em português e eu posso responder por essa via.
Xin kính chào tất cả quý vị phụ huynh học sinh, tôi là thông dịch viên tiếng Việt Nam và tối hôm nay. Nếu quý vị có bất cứ một câu hỏi gì, xin làm ơn lên tiếng để tôi có thể giúp cho quý vị để mà tham khảo với lại tất cả các thầy cô tại trường ngày tối hôm nay. Xin cảm ơn tất cả.
嗨，你好，我是叫瑞，我是你们的国语翻译。如果说你们有什么问题的话呢，可以在右下角在那个聊天室里面打下你们的问题，我们会帮你问的。谢谢你。
Hola, muy buenas noches. Mi nombre es Brian. Yo soy intérprete de español. Estoy aquí para asistirlos. Si necesitan intérprete, el servicio está disponible de parte mía. Le pudieran también dejar saber a las personas de la reunión que necesitan intérprete para poderles dejar saber cómo poder recibir el servicio y va a ser un gusto para poder acompañar esta noche. Muchas gracias.
Thank you. Thank you for doing that. So thanks to all for attending tonight. And Courtney, we'll start with you.
Great, thanks, Kate. Hi, everybody. I know a lot of you all on here, but for those of you that I don't know, my name's Courtney Porteos, and I'm a current member of the school committee. I was appointed earlier this year to fill a vacancy through the end of the year, and I've really loved every minute that I've had so far of being on there, being able to stand up and speak out for our students, our families, and our teachers. And I'm running this fall for the opportunity to continue to serve on the school committee. I live in Quincy Point with my husband, Steve, and our 3 children, Casey, MJ, and Hannah. Our 2 oldest are in the APC program at Central in 6th and 8th grade, and our youngest is in 5th grade at Point Webster Middle School. We're longtime volunteers in our community, and for the past 8 years, I've been a strong parent advocate for our school system. Before being appointed to the school committee, I was co-president of this awesome group citywide. And in that role, I was fortunate enough to be able to build many great relationships with families across the district. And I regularly brought parent concerns to school leaders and worked to heighten parent voices and better our school system. And that's the perspective I feel that I bring to the school committee, just being a voice for families, as well as being supportive of our teachers, all in an effort to create the best school district we can for our students. And thank you for having us all here tonight. Look forward to the questions.
Doug, you're up next.
All right, excellent. I'm Doug Guttrow. I'd like to thank Ashley and Kate and all those that serve on Citywide PTO for having us and for your advocacy and your leadership over the years on behalf of our kids. Over the past 4 years, I've had the privilege to serve as a member of the Quincy School Committee that's tackled some of the toughest issues in a generation. We hired the first superintendent in 2 decades. We took a raw, hard look at our district's EDI efforts, and we navigated a pandemic. I'm proud of the work that we've done, and as I look ahead, I believe that my experience and perspective will continue to make a difference for our kids. As the father of 2 boys who chose different high schools, my son Brian chose Quincy High School, and my son Scotty chose North Quincy High School, I would say that I have a unique insight into our school system. I've also spent 20 years teaching at the college level, both at the graduate and undergraduate level. And my service on the school committee, as well as my 14 years serving on the Quincy State Council, have given me great insight into where our district is and where it can be. As many of you that follow the school committee meetings know, I'm not afraid to ask the difficult questions, and I believe strongly that parents, students, and teachers deserve a say as they have a stake in our school system. And I have nothing but optimism for QPS in the years ahead. I look forward to tonight's discussion, and I hope by the end of the night to earn one of your 3 votes. Thank you.
Emily, you're next.
Hi, thank you all for being here, and thank you to the Citywide folks for organizing this. We have been to a lot of things this campaign season, but I don't think anything is as important as this one. So even though it's the last one, it's probably the most important one to be getting this information out to the parents. And I'm glad that it's being recorded because I know not everybody can be here tonight. There's a lot of stuff going on in people's lives, so I'm glad that you're recording this. I am the only candidate who has been a public school teacher and administrator. And I've worked for the Quincy Public Schools and other schools, and I'm also still working in public education as a consultant. So I have a lot of years' experience working within our schools and across schools and districts. And I think I bring a very unique lens to this district because of that. I also, for those of you on Citywide know that I'm not afraid to be an independent voice and say what I want or what I feel needs to be said. I've worked collaboratively with Citywide before. We had an incredible project to review the homework policy together, and we pulled that together. I was able to champion that from the school side, from the school committee side, and with the parents' input, we did some incredible things. What I loved about that the most was the input that we got from students, parents, and teachers, and the way we did it with the surveys. We had never done anything quite like that in Quincy Public Schools before, but we're doing it all the time now, especially since the pandemic. And we're getting some great information when we survey parents and students and teachers. But I think one of the things that I've loved the most is the walking and knocking that I've been doing this year and really getting out there in the community and hearing people's real stories and following up with those people when they have issues and bringing them to the right people in the district when they have issues. So I think that I bring a unique thing to the school system. I have 7 grandchildren, 6 of whom were enrolled in 3 different levels of our schools at 4 different schools. So I hear things firsthand all the time from them, also from the parents. So, okay, anyway, that's why I'm here, and I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Liberty Schaff. I'm a lifelong Quincy resident. I have degrees in early childhood education as well as business management. I have 6 wonderful children who have all gone through Quincy Public Schools. 2 have already graduated, and I have 4 that are currently enrolled. My daughter is just starting 1st grade, so I'm extremely vested in the system. I have been on the PTO in almost every role imaginable, including leadership roles, such as president. I've been active since day one when my first child enrolled at Atherton Howe. I have a vast experience and knowledge dealing with Quincy Public Schools. I've also learned how to be a fierce advocate for my children and their needs. And I can work collaboratively with absolutely everyone, and I'm very goal-oriented. I would love a chance to help families in the city of Quincy and to use my voice to help advocate for all of the children, not just mine.
Liz?
Good evening, I'm Liz Speakman, and I'm so happy to see so many familiar faces and names on Citywide tonight. And I really appreciate those of you who are able to tune in either now or at a later date, because I know you have a million things going on. So I'm a mom. I have 2 young boys, 8 and 3. I'm also a clinical social worker with 20 years of mental health experience. I've worked in big systems such as Mass General Hospital and currently for the city of Cambridge. I'm helping those systems understand and minimize the impacts of trauma. I've also done clinical work with individuals and groups, helping them heal from trauma and become more resilient as a result. I've been involved in many of the parent organizations, including on the executive board of the Citywide PTO and co-chairing the Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Subcommittee. And I think that these are areas of expertise that would serve us tremendously well on school committee at this moment in time as we emerge from this pandemic that we know has been a collective trauma for our young people. Having someone on school committee who has experience with helping systems to be able to respond to trauma in a way that supports growth and healing as well as increasing resilience. I also live with the daily implications of decisions that are made on school committee. I know that many of you are probably multitasking right now, making dinner, helping your kids with your homework, catching up on emails. I see you, Nate. And I know because that's me too. I'm doing all those same things and was watching school committee meetings wondering, is that time or I have another 30 seconds? Time. All right, I'm with you and I humbly ask for your vote.
Unmute myself. I have to say one thing. I'm Tina Cahill, and thank you for the time to talk about my candidacy with you tonight. This is the most intense job interview I think I've ever been on. I don't know about the rest of you, but I've never had to stand out in front of an office building with my friends to say, hire me. But I appreciate the opportunity to get out there and meet people. I'm running for school committee because I think that at this time, my personal and professional experience has prepared me to contribute to the school committee in a meaningful way. I'm a lifelong resident of Quincy. I'm the daughter of immigrant parents who came to this country and didn't speak English. So I understand the challenges and the barriers that are placed in front of immigrant families. I'm married and have 4 daughters, all of whom went through the Quincy public school system. So that also gives me an understanding of the importance of advocating for your children and their education. I have 30 years experience working in education as a teacher and an administrator. And that experience gives me the understanding of how we all need to work together to be able to effectively offer children the learning experience that they deserve. It's multi-pronged, and that's where I think experience in both teaching and administration is helpful. Also, currently I'm the executive director of Recovered Souls, which is a foundation that works with individuals who are actively working their recovery. And one of our primary goals is to help them with their education. Okay, thank you.
And my apologies, the technical difficulties continue. I don't think you can hear my 1-minute bell. So we can just do up to 1.5 minutes if the candidates are comfortable with that. And I'll just say time at that point. Or I can give a minute warning, but I don't want to interrupt you twice. So why don't we just go with 1.5 minutes?
Ashley, do you mind just like giving a wave at 1 minute?
Sure, happy to.
Okay, thank you.
So we'll start with the first question, and a number of you answered the first part, which is why did you decide to run for school committee? But we'd like to hear what are your top 2 priorities if you get elected. And Courtney, we start with you.
All right. I miss our stop signs when we used to do this in person. So awesome. So I didn't actually answer why I wanted to run for school committee. So I want to do that. This is my second time running. So I have 2 different kind of answers for that question. 2 years ago, I ran because no one on the school committee at the time and no other candidates running that year with me had younger kids in the school system. And I would watch school committee meetings and feel that it was an important perspective that wasn't being represented on there. So this time around, it's a little different because I'm actually on the committee, doing the work, asking the questions, speaking up for our students and families and our teachers. And the reason I'm running this time is because I love it. I would love the opportunity to continue on there. And so that's my reason. And as for priorities, right now, obviously, number 1 priority is supporting our students, our teachers and staff as they continue to transition back into the classroom full time. We need to be checking in often with members of our school community and shifting resources to address whatever needs that will continue to arise. It will definitely be one of my goals till we're through the pandemic. And then it's really hard to pick just 2, but there's a lot I want to keep working on, but I'm probably going to go with equity being my number 2 priority. And that applies to things like making sure we're investing in upgrades and repairs to our older school buildings and grounds so students have access to comparable resources and opportunities as students in our newer buildings. And it also applies to finding a way for our 5th grade students across the district to attend school in elementary school setting.
Thank you. Doug, your question?
Why did I run for school committee? My top priorities. Number 1, I love our city. Number 2, I'm a QPS grad myself, and it gave me the opportunity to get a bachelor's degree and a master's degree and have an extraordinary career in the federal government, as well as to be able to teach for 20 years at Suffolk University. But 4 years ago, when I chose to run, it was because my good friend Barbara Isola decided not to seek re-election. At that point, I had 2 boys in the school system, one that was in middle school, the other was entering high school. And as I said earlier, I taught 20 years at the college level. And so I know what it's like to prepare a lesson, stand in front of a classroom and inspire our students. I've also spent 14 years, like I said, on the city council. And I was proud to support 14 school budgets to security improvements for all of our schools, investments in parks, playgrounds, our recreational programs, as well as investments in roof windows, boilers, and supporting the construction of new Quincy High School, Central Middle School, and Southwest Middle School. So I love the system. It's done for my kids. In terms of priorities, there's more than 2, but certainly prioritizing emotional and social emotional and learning loss supports to get our kids back to where they should be, to keep our class sizes small and our schools safe, ensuring sufficient staffing that we have, but also a constant vigilance on our facilities and technology. And in the long term, I'd like to see us evaluate universal pre-K options in our schools.
Thank you. Emily?
Yes, so I decided to run for the school committee, re-election to the school committee for many reasons. First, I do love the work. I've always loved the work. I feel I still have more to contribute. And I wanted to see through some of the work we've put in place with Visions and Dove and other social emotional learning topics. And I wanted to make sure we saw those through and they became integral parts of our curriculum. My priorities for running out, first to ensure that all the students who have had any learning loss during the pandemic are found and supported in creative ways. It's easy to get some kids back in, but we haven't really gone looking for the kids who can't find a way back in to get help for that loss. And I'd like to see some things around work and learning, maybe summer jobs with an educational component for the high school kids, something that will really bring those kids back into the classroom, because it's easier to get the little kids in than it is to get the bigger kids in. My second and most important priority for me is going to be make sure that we have an evidence-based social emotional learning curriculum, K through 12 in our schools. We have seen some of the incidents that are happening in our schools now and have happened in the past, and our kids need this besides the basics. I think we do a great job teaching the basics. Our curriculum is great. Our program of studies is great, but we dropped the ball on this very early. When our kids transition to middle school, there's hardly any social emotional learning going on. And at high school, there has been very little at all. We always do campaigns if something bad happens, but we don't have anything evidence-based. And by that, I mean something that is sequenced and connected in coordinated activities, K through 12, active forms of learning, focused time on skill development, and explicit targeting of SEL skills. Thank you.
Liberty?
Hi. Well, I decided to run because I honestly feel a great responsibility to give back. I said earlier that I have a lot of knowledge and experience dealing with Quincy Public Schools. My children varied greatly from accelerated learners to children with special needs, and I honestly feel that I have a lot of knowledge and experience that I could give back, and I think that I could help a lot of families along the way. If elected, there are many things that I would really like to do, but one of those would be if you have a child that needs extra services or is on an IEP or a 504 or just is needing help with speech or occupational therapy, that process can be very confusing and emotional and overwhelming at times. And I think that we could do a lot to make it a little bit more transparent and easier. I don't think that parents need to feel alone there. And I think that Quincy has so many wonderful resources that we could really be helping more children if we could help get them in a little bit easier. Something else that I'd really like to work on as well is just getting more parent involvement. I feel that parents need to be brought into this process, that if we can make parents feel empowered and give them opportunities to have more feedback, that we could all work together, and I think that it would benefit all of the children as well.
Thank you. Liz?
So I decided to run because I can relate to all of you parents with the sense of wanting things to be different and feeling like I should have a say and a voice in how that is, since we are impacted directly by the decisions that are made on school committee. And I have a vision for QPS. I think many of the decisions that are made across the district are reactive, and they are not from the basis of a vision. And my vision for QPS is around belonging and creating a sense of belonging for all of our students. It's something that I established when I started running in March and created our website, which is translated into 4 different languages. And I have concrete priorities that I think that we could implement that would bring us towards a sense of belonging for all of our families, including the family liaison positions, a language line, more diversity in our educators, as well as raises for our teachers so they have a sense of belonging as well. I also would love to see young students not have to choose between play and eating. Many of our young students do not have enough time to eat lunch and also have recess, and it's not a choice that they should have to make.
Thank you. Tina?
So I think I answered why I decided to run for school committee based on my personal and professional experience. A couple of priorities that I think right now, and the other candidates expressed, was basically the learning loss and the social emotional effects that COVID had on our students. And right now, I think our main priority is to make sure that these students are getting what they need to be able to catch up. But it's also, we need to support not only the students, but also the faculty and the staff, because I think it's, I'm listening to the school committee meetings and the administration and trying to balance both the current learning needs and the learning loss that the students had encountered during that time away from school. It's been kind of difficult. So it's not only the loss for the students, but it's also what the teachers and the staff and administration needs to be able to keep everyone moving forward. So that's one major. Also the social emotional piece, because there's students that are having a difficult time reentering the classroom for multiple different reasons. And so in the past I've said we have American Rescue Act funds that are coming to the school system for the next few years, and it would be good to be able to use those funds to be able to support the students in both of those areas. So that's huge for me. The other thing I think is important, which I found a little bit complicated, especially during this time, is communication with parents. I feel like it wasn't as clear and efficient as it could be. And I think that that's something that should be addressed, not just at this time, but always, so that if you need to find information, it should be easy to access.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to turn this over to Ginger now for the next question.
Hi, folks. We've heard some candidates talk about their support of individualized learning. Do you feel that instruction in our schools currently meet that definition? And if not, what resources are necessary for our teachers to execute it?
Kate, I think I'm first up, correct?
Right, Doug, it starts with you.
Okay, sure. So every parent that has a child that struggles in the classroom or conversely isn't challenged by the curriculum should and typically is a strong advocate for individualized learning. I think QPS does a good job assessing student needs. We do three assessments 3 times a year in the fall, winter, and spring with the MAP assessment for reading, math, and science. We also do the DIBELS for younger kids. Through those assessments, I think we do a pretty good job picking up on some of those needs and determining what, if any, interventions are necessary. I think, as always, we diligently monitor for adding math interventionalists as well as literacy specialists, if the budget allows. Those are going to be important issues moving forward. I think where there are more intense needs, we target, and we should continue to target, looking at tutors for things like reading. If intervention doesn't work, there's typically a referral to special education. And in some cases, as I said, we could look at advanced learning options, especially at the lower grades when students feel unchallenged. So this, in my perspective, is the essence of individual learning.
Thank you. I'm gonna start. So it does take place in some places in our schools now, not for every student and not everywhere, but certainly every student who's on an IEP has a specialized learning plan that is revisited yearly with the parents and the student. We also have a special population in the high school that's now in a resource room that is being supported based on the courses that are in with a conclusion. So they're being mainstreamed, but they're being supported with a resource room person to help them, students with an IEP. We also have a lot of early elementary stuff. We have a great literacy program in the early years that catches a lot of kids and catches them up so that they're at grade level or receiving special needs services. And as Mr. Guttrow said, we do the MAP assessment and we do the MCAS assessment. And from those, we identify deficits and do come up with a plan to get kids back up to the level they need to be to improve on those scores. We have advanced coursework from elementary to high school, but I do think that we have, and the teachers recently have purchased a lot of materials that allow for individualized instruction for kids who need more challenge or more enrichment, or maybe some more structure around what they're learning. I think we need more professional development on how to use that in a classroom with 20 kids in it. I don't think it's that easy to do, but it can be done, and we have been purchasing curriculum materials to move us in that direction. I also would like to see us do more with Naviance, because Naviance is an individualized plan, and it's student-focused, where the student actually takes a look at their interests and their abilities and starts planning their future life outside of high school. Unfortunately, it's only 4-year college focus, so I'd like to see that change.
Hello. So I'm one of those candidates that's been talking about individual learning. I don't think that we could always use more resources. There's never enough, but I don't think that we would need to dedicate any new funding towards this or anything like that. I think some schools and teachers are doing a fantastic job of individualized learning, and I think that some are struggling with it. I think that if we could put policies in place, if we could, like Emily just talked about, have a little bit more student geared learning where they can invest, they can let us know, they can help with their goal setting, determining what their best learning styles are, really communicating to us. I think that could help a lot with them. building up their motivation and their responsibility and self-advocating skills. I think that we could also put in place team meetings that could happen with teachers and administrators and support staff, everybody that comes in contact with the child, so that everybody's really on the same page as where the child is and what the child needs. I think that that would be a huge help to the individualized learning. I also think that we need to work in a cooperating manner with parents. I think that parents know their children best, and I think that we need to get a little bit more input from them as to what they think would work as well. And I think that students need to have multiple opportunities to show their learning and their knowledge and what they have been getting in the classroom, as opposed to just paper and pen tests. And I think that we also need to provide various opportunities for the children to learn in different ways. I think VOTEC schools and classrooms do a wonderful job of this. And I think that we could carry that on into other classroom activities. Thank you.
Thank you, Ginger, for the question. I think there's several things that we could do towards moving in a direction of having all students have access to individualized learning. One of the things that a lot of people talk to me about when I'm knocking on doors, people who even have not had kids in the system for a long time, or it's their grandchildren, the theme I've heard a lot is feeling like QPS is a gatekeeper for resources and accommodations, and that parents have to become expert education advocates in order to get access to what their children need. I've heard a lot of stress and anxiety and worry and despair around what this future for their children or grandchildren will look like if they don't have access to what they actually need through our public school system. And that's heartbreaking to me. And I don't think that that's the intention of anyone at QPS, to become gatekeepers for access to resources or accommodations. I think it's an unintended consequence of some of the policies that have been put in place. And I think school committee can play a critical role in ensuring that all families have access to what they need. And part of that is having QPAC as a partner and making sure that family engagement is critical, and we're being proactive about inviting parents into the process and not reactive and fighting against students getting what they need. Thank you.
I think, to be honest with you, I think we have a pretty good school system, and we try to address all the different learning needs that our students have. There's always room for improvement. There's always room to initiate new programs, new trends, new things that can help our students in the classroom. I think we already do have a lot of things where we deal with, literacy. We deal with advanced placement courses. We have IEP plans. We have the VOTEC. Now we have the early college program, and we're going to be doing the learning center for students who have autism. So, when I listen to the school committee meetings, and I listen to the administrators, the faculty, the staff, I think that they work really hard to try to make sure that our students are getting what they need. And we need to understand that, budgets and fiscal availability and what the teachers have for time in their classroom are barriers or things that we need to look at to make sure that we're using all of our resources to be able to do the things we need for our students. We do things well, and maybe there are things that we don't, but I think that we can always continue to grow and make adjustments as we go. But I also believe that as parents, we need to really pay attention to our students. If we feel like they're not getting what they need, we need to advocate for them and speak to the appropriate people to make sure that they're getting what they need. It can be inside the system, it could be outside of the system. So individual learning is important.
Hi. So when I saw this question ahead of time, as Kate mentioned, she gave us all the questions ahead of time. I have never used the phrase individualized learning in my campaign. So to be honest, I wasn't 100% sure what that meant. So for what it meant to me was, I guess I was a little uncomfortable at first because it felt like we were going to be going down the road of asking every teacher to kind of have a separate curriculum or guide for every student in their class, which is, sorry. It's not realistic, I think. But what we do have in our classrooms right now, and what I think does work well, is a differentiated learning model, where teachers kind of start with their main lesson plan or topic that they want to introduce that day. And then they have centers, classroom centers, where they can provide differentiated opportunities and a level of difficulty in classwork and homework for students that either need a little practice or a little more of a challenge. Where I think QPS could use a little help in this area is around advanced students, students working well above grade level, especially in the younger grades. I think when they get to middle school, high school, there's various leveled courses that are available to them. And I think that definitely helps keep students learning and their growth trajectory on track. But in the younger grades, I don't think we're there yet. I was proud to be part of the QPS team that reimagined the APP fifth grade program in our district early this spring. And it's now called the REACH program. I worked with Ashley and some parents on there and teachers and administrators. And we revamped the program to keep our students in their home school and giving them additional time on learning that they used to spend traveling to Point Webster for the program. And I'm just excited for that program to continue and evolve.
Thank you. Our next question starts with Emily. And it is many families and other stakeholders have expressed concern over the current teacher contract negotiations and the potential impact on attracting and keeping highly qualified teachers. How would you respond to this, and what do you think the school committee's role is in addressing these concerns?
So of course we have a role in contract negotiations. It's one of our main functions is to be negotiating the contract. I cannot comment on it specifically right now because it's confidential and should not be shared outside of the negotiation room, the bargaining room. Until last week, the school committee side didn't speak on this at all until the last school committee meeting. And the mayor did bring up something that he said he could actually be charged with an unfair labor practice by speaking about it outside of the meeting. So I don't think it's really difficult to discuss this when we can't discuss it as a sitting member of the school committee. We have to be as confidential as we can. I do know that our teachers deserve what every other union in our district and our city has received so far. They deserve a 0 and 3 for this coming year, so that we can then start negotiating a real contract where there can be language changes that really have to be done. We have not had any difficulty filling our professional positions this year at all, and we don't usually. I think that we have had significant problems fulfilling the paraprofessional jobs, and we do need to look at that salary. We need to look at that salary and make sure that we are increasing paraprofessional pay and our substitute pay. We're having a huge issue with substitutes, and we pay them $85 a day. And in 1987, we paid them $65 a day, and it's only gone up $20 since 1987. So that's a real problem for me. But I am looking forward to working on the new long-term contract once that time comes up, so that we can get some language changes in there and get some real advancements for the teachers and the students. Thank you.
So I am a huge fan of all of the teachers. I'm always in support of teachers being paid well. I don't think there's many more jobs that are too much more important than teaching their young and growing minds. I know that this particular contract right now is solely monetary, and there's not any other negotiations going on. So I know that the mayor is the head of the school committee and sets the budget. So there's not much the school committee can do on it right now. I'm not sure how I could help with the negotiations here. Would love to be involved in negotiations in the future for many other topics, but for monetary only, I think that Quincy teachers are paid fairly well in comparison to other schools and towns. And I would like to continue on that trend. I think that they're very important. But just as a home budget, there's only so much money and it has to be spread in so many areas. So hopefully the mayor can do the best he can do.
So I have a lot of thoughts about this. One of the first groups that I reached out to when I decided to run was the Quincy Education Association, because I know that our teachers, our educators are critical in everything that we do on school committee. And so we need to understand what it is that it's on their minds and in their hearts. And I've been in close contact with them ever since and was very proud to receive their endorsement before the preliminary election. And I fully support them getting a raise similar to what the other unions get, and was actually surprised that other members of the school committee are not part of the negotiation team. And I think that's something to advocate for, to have other members of school committee be part of that team. Clearly, it's not going as well as we would hope. And so I think having more wisdom and insight part of that process would be beneficial for everyone. And when I was advocating for family liaison positions last year and saw it included in the budget and saw the salary that was comparable to the paraprofessionals, I almost died. I could not believe how low our paraprofessional salary was, and have been talking about having the importance of having a market review for our paras so that we can make sure that their pay is commensurate with the very important work that they do. And I think that we need to put our money where our mouth is. If we say we support our teachers and we value them and we value our paras, then we need to compensate them accordingly.
Time.
Hi. Like Emily said prior, the negotiations are not public, so it's really difficult to be able to comment on what the sticking points are and why they aren't able to come to an agreement. Obviously, we all want to feel valued for the work that we do, and we cannot underestimate the work that our faculty does in the classroom, the teachers do in the classroom every day. You know, so hopefully the union leaders and the administration can come together and come to an agreement, to a contract that makes our teachers feel like they are valued for the work that they do. I also feel as though the paraprofessionals and the substitutes, like Emily said, need to be compensated, because if a teacher isn't in the classroom, we rely on the subs to be able to take their lesson plans and implement them during the day. It's not just coming in to babysit a class. So unless we pay them well and compensate them, we don't get people who can, who may be committed to that. And also the paraprofessionals who are in the classroom every day, they're there as a regular job. And if they aren't compensated well to assist the teachers in the classroom, then there's a lot of turnover, and they're not able to maybe help the way they could. So compensation's huge. I think we can all agree that we want our teachers to be paid what they deserve and value them the way they should be. Thank you.
So if any of you watched last week's school committee meeting, you'll know that I share in those concerns that you all have, and that I'm not afraid to speak up to defend our teachers. As Emily said, because negotiations are ongoing and confidential, there's not a lot I can say also as a sitting member, but the mayor kind of opened the door for that in the meeting, and I just couldn't allow the comments about negotiations being a game to go forward without commenting on that. I thought it was horrendous that we were likening, giving our teachers a much needed and deserved increase to a game. It's not like that. I don't know any rich teachers. I don't know anyone who's living the lap of luxury as a teacher. This money is going to put food on their tables for their families and paying their mortgage. So I really didn't like that, I have to say. So I had to speak up for that. And, I 100% support our teachers and will do all I can to advocate for them getting the compensation they deserve. And they deserve more than 0.3. If we just need to say that. They deserve more than 0-3. Whatever they end up agreeing on, it may be a different story. And lastly, I just want to say the QEA, the Quincy Education Association, it's the collective voice for our teachers in our city. And the relationship that the school committee has with the QEA needs to be respected and valued. And just because a group has new leadership and doesn't lead the way the last leadership does, doesn't mean you can just throw up your hands and pout. You need to be able to work with different leaders. I've been working with the new leadership at QEA for the last few months, and I find their insights to be helpful, and I can hear what the concerns of teachers are. So I'd like to keep working on that, and I'm proud to be endorsed by them as well. Thank you.
So throughout my career on the City Council and the School Committee, I've been proud to be endorsed by many unions, including the Norfolk County Labor Council this year and many others. And that's probably because I share their values. I was a dues-paying member of the American Federation of Government Employees for many years before I got my current position. When Anthony Andronico was vice chair of the school committee, the vice chair has vast power, which is appointing people to a variety of different subcommittees. But I asked Anthony to be a member of the negotiating committee for QEA's contract. That's what I asked for. So I was intended to be a member of that negotiating committee. And then, of course, COVID hit, as we know, and the broad negotiations that Emily talked about that would include 3 years and language changes got kicked off because of COVID, and they had to do MOUs throughout COVID, which they continued to do. So, the mayor moved forward without language change and broader changes, which would be the 0-3 that many of the other unions have agreed to in the city. So I think I agree with Emily's response with respect to we need to be show some discretion as sitting members of the school committee, in terms of what we can and cannot say. But I share everybody's concern, and I'm in agreement that teachers deserve to be treated fairly and with respect and have access to the same raises that every other union in the city has agreed to.
I'll turn over the next question to Laura.
The question is, how can Quincy Public School better recognize and support our students' diversity in the classroom and curriculum?
And it starts with Liberty.
Is that working? Okay. Well, I think that we already have some wonderful people working on the Equity and Inclusion Board. I know that they're already starting policies, but I think that a nice first step would be to identify the system policies and practices that are inherent to the district that may be limiting some of the groups of students. I think that would be important to find out. I think that we can, well, first of all, school is a very important place. It's very important for children to feel comfortable, safe, and supported. I think that we could also help that by making sure that we add diverse books into the classroom and school libraries, making sure that everybody has books that they can feel like-minded with, books that refer back to their culture and their home and different languages that they speak. And I think that if we could get children to talk more about it, if we could recognize the differences, if we could make this an everyday conversation, then children could learn so much from each other and all of the different cultural backgrounds that Quincy is so fortunate to have.
Next. Excellent. Lots of thoughts about this one too. So I think, as I mentioned, my vision for QPS is really centered around a sense of belonging, and that's the work that I've been doing for a long time. One of the projects that I've been working with some teachers to create a proposal around is creating a pipeline of more diverse teachers by offering a stipend for student teachers once they've completed their master's and they need to do their student teaching, for QPS graduates to be able to come back and do their student teaching within QPS and receive a stipend to do that. So they receive kind of a foot in the door and ability to hopefully secure a job. I've also was the co-chair of the EDI subcommittee last year when we created the school reps group, which is many of you are part of that group, and Shiv was instrumental in creating that, and Shiv and Gina now co-chair that. That group has been a treasure trove of amazing ideas and suggestions for how QPS can do better around diversity, equity, and inclusion. They've created bulletin boards, helped create climate assessments for various schools. They've done activities like what's in your lunchbox to share and kind of reduce the stigma of what children are eating. And I think if we listen to our parents and our families more and take their lead on what we can do better, we will only succeed. We will have a pathway towards success around really creating the culture and the climate that we all want to see for QPS. I'm excited to be part of that. Thank you.
Am I unmuted? Yes. Well, I think I mentioned in my statement in the beginning that I am a daughter of immigrant parents, neither of which spoke English when they came to this country. So what I do think is that immigrant families and parents have a hard time reaching out to school systems. I think when they're coming from a different country right away, they're more interested in assimilating in the workplace and creating a life for themselves in a new country. I think that, as a school system, maybe we can put something in place. Liz has mentioned before, liaisons where we can try to reach out to families and parents and guardians to help them feel more comfortable with having a conversation with the school system, the teachers or the parents. Obviously, having interpretations, having literature and letters going out to students, families in their language is important. I also think that support in the classroom for teachers who maybe have students in their classroom that don't speak English as their first language and they have English as a second language, that it helps the teachers to be able to navigate and manage the classroom better while including these students into the conversation. I'm sure there's many things that we can do to make children and families feel proud of their culture and not be embarrassed by some of the things that they do, maybe that is different. I mentioned it when I was speaking one day about my mother used to make frittata sandwiches for lunch. And, that was kind of embarrassing when everyone else was having ham and cheese. So I understand all of that. And I think we do a good job, but we can always do better and continue to include students in the culture.
Next. All right. So one of the strengths of our school system is absolutely the diversity of our student body and our school community. My children all have friends of all different races, ethnicities, and we celebrate that in my home. There's so many opportunities for all of our students to learn about each other's culture and traditions, holidays, style of dress, food, dances, just in the normal day-to-day conversations that they have on the playground and in the classroom. So there are a lot of clubs that QPS offers beyond the school day that center around culture and race, sexuality, gender identity. A lot of those groups are student driven, student led, which I think is great. We've done the vocal survey, and I've found that school leaders recognize that need for more diverse text in our media centers, and they've been responsive. And our efforts are currently underway to diversify the books that we have, that our students have access to. So I think we're in a good starting place right now in the school district, but there's always ways we can improve. We can continue to provide more professional development opportunities for students and staff about new ways to support and speak about diversity. I'd support adding role models from every culture, race, ethnicity, gender, sexuality, religion to our curriculum. That way all of our students can see themselves in what they're learning and relate to characters in fiction and in history and find people that they can look up to. And we need to keep pushing back against just teaching about Native American history at Thanksgiving, Black history at Black History Month, and just kind of interweave all of our cultures, histories, throughout our curriculum. Thank you.
So I agree with Courtney that the diversity in our school system is our strength. My kids have friends as well from every culture, and it's a far cry, frankly, from 20, 30, 40 years ago when I was in school. So over the past year or so, I think we've come a longer way in a shorter time, but there's work to be done. You know, the first step is hiring a workforce that looks like the student body. We have not kept up with it, and if you look at we used to get a list of the orientations, and every last name was either Irish or Italian, which is my descent, but that didn't reflect the school system. And I think some of the recommendations that Liz and others might have are worthy of looking at in terms of how you better recruit it. But it's an issue in every organization, the difficulty in recruiting and training a diverse workforce. So it's easier said than done. Conscious choices for books that represent diverse authors. I think we need to continue to do diverse cultures. And we need to be sure that our kids themselves see themselves in the curriculum. And we should consider publishers that create materials through an equity lens. I think it was mentioned earlier, the Decorate Your Door that's happening in some of the schools, what we stand for, the values they uphold. I know Marymount did an EDI book club. I know other schools did the What's in Your Lunch box to talk about they're expressing their cultures through food. I know the Girl Rising campaign in the spring, among other things, talk about girls from other countries, and that really solicited an involvement. And I think the One Book, One School initiative in the middle was a terrific way to do it. And finally, I want to say that, you know, Marshall's Multicultural Affair event, the annual event that they have, really builds inclusion inside the school culture. So those are some of the recommendations and some of the things that I think we're doing that deserve praise.
So yeah, I can start, I guess. I agree with everything that has been said before me. I mean, certainly, I think we have great diversity in our districts, and I think we have been doing for a long time some great events so that kids could be celebrated, their diversity could be celebrated right in their buildings. They've had cultural events at most of the schools. The principals have been recognizing this for a long time. But Courtney's right. Several years ago, we did a vocal culture survey of all our schools, and it was heartbreaking to see. The one thing that came out of there that was so disturbing was that the kids never saw themselves or people who looked like them in their curriculum. And we immediately started to change that when that happened. We got to the professional who was doing all our literacy training, changed all the books out so that there'd be more diversity that the kids were reading in elementary school. We had the teachers look long and hard at the books they were doing in middle school too. And as Doug said, the One School, One Book, we are starting to do much better with that. But I last spring asked the high school principals to convene a meeting with the two high schools because we had received a $5,000 donation, North Quincy did, to buy books from culturally diverse authors. And I was very concerned that it was not going to be the same at Quincy High School. So we convened the group. It was a curriculum collaboration, and the students and the teachers chose books that they would read over the summer to put in the curriculum. And I'm happy to say that I went to the school committee and the mayor and got funding so that Quincy High had $10,000 and North Quincy High had $10,000 to make sure that would be happening this year. We can always do more, and we should hear from our people and understand that. And what the visions work is going to inform that for us too. So I'm I'll be happy to see that report when it comes out. It's been a long time waiting.
Thank you. The next question starts with you, Liz. And it's, should the district have consistent policies across the schools when it comes to things like after-school activities and graduation or promotion ceremonies? For example, some schools hold fairs and exhibitions only during school hours, while others hold them after school so working families can attend.
Thank you, Kate. So I think that the district has worked really hard to find the balance between ensuring that different schools can maintain their individuality and their culture in the ways that that local community needs best, and also having standards across the district. I do think that having accessible opportunities for parents and families to be engaged should be an expectation that we have across the district, that if there are ways that parents and families request and ask and need to be able to be involved, such as having events after school hours and having them accessible during, virtually. I know a lot of parents have talked about loving being able to do parent-teacher conferences virtually so that they can access that however they need to. I think that we need to prioritize making sure that family engagement is the priority, and that we are listening to parents and families and taking what they offer and integrating it into the policies and procedures that we practice.
I guess my answer would be to this, that this is exactly where the citywide PTO is probably, your input is really important here. As a group, I would say that you would collectively question the parents and the school system to see what would work best for them. I know that so many parents today are off working. They're not here during the school day, and it's difficult for them to maybe get out to be able to come and go to a parent conference or a show or whatever it is that might be happening during the day. So that's why I think the evenings are probably better, and if it was more consistent across the board. So I don't understand why all the different schools have different schedules for how they do things, but I would think that that would be a parent survey to find out what works best for them. Doing the parent-teacher conferences by Zoom makes sense if everyone's comfortable with that, and not being in person isn't important to them. But I believe that, as far as all the other activities and events that happen in a school day and in the evening, I think it depends on what the parent consensus is at that point. Yeah.
Thanks. Thanks for that question. So yeah, this is something that we talk about on Citywide PTO for like years, right? This is, it's the balance between individuality and consistency, like what Liz was talking about there, that there's definitely many instances where uniformity across the district makes sense, but there's definitely still a line and a need to respect the individuality of each school community and allow the principals and the PTOs who are often involved in a lot of these events some freedom to do to mark the occasion in their buildings the way that they think would work best for their school community. So I think that we need to be a little careful when we talk about uniformity in that way. But I think we do a decent job marking different occasions. Usually the schools all celebrate the promotion from elementary to middle in some way, even if it's not exactly the same in each school. The second issue in that question is when to hold events. So as anyone who's ever been part of a PTO knows, there's no one time to hold an event that works for everyone. And I think sometimes we forget that not everyone who works 9 to 5. Some work nights, some work weekends. So you're never going to find a right day or time that's convenient for everyone. But I think one good thing that came out of COVID has been the ability to watch things via live stream or participate over Zoom or Google Meet. So a lot of PTO meetings are being held in a hybrid way. So I could see encouraging schools to now start offering a virtual option to families that can't make it to the actual event. So thank you.
I will say more of the same. This one's a tough one. There are so many different schools and there are so many different opinions, and there are so many, frankly, after school commitments. The older that you get, you have commitments of sports and theater and band and so many other commitments that have to happen. So it's super challenging. I think it's super challenging to set a citywide policy that would tell schools to be consistent around this. I think the answer is, and I think Emily and Tina both mentioned it earlier with respect to this and others, but surveying. I mean, I think one of the things that we've really, through COVID, have, I won't say perfected, but improved upon has been our ability to survey. And we could survey parents, and certainly the PTOs could be helpful in discerning which events might want to be after school, which events might want to be in school. But I think that decision shouldn't be uniform across the board because the cultures in each of the schools are so different. And my guess is that if you do the surveys, you might come up with the the same decision that we saw during COVID with 50% of the students essentially choosing remote and 50% choosing to come back in. So unless there's a clear consensus within a school and you want to cater to the parents in that specific school district, it becomes difficult to modify it. So, but I do think it's all about parental input, student input, teacher input, and at each of the school levels.
Yes, so I agree. I don't think that we should have hard and fast policies across the district for several reasons. First of all, if there were teachers or staff involved in any of those after-school events, we would have to negotiate with the union whether or not they would have to go to those. We already negotiate for the parent-teacher conferences, so it has implications when you establish a policy like that. We would have to go back to the bargaining table and talk to the teachers about it. The other reason I'm not in favor of it is every school is different, and every school does deserve to have its own culture. And I think that frequently these events are put on by the PTO, and I would not be comfortable telling the PTO what they had to do or when they had to do it. But frequently they're very, very involved in all of these events, and I think we need to give them the latitude. As far as when it should be done, you never know when it's going to be the best time, whether it's going to be during the school day or after school. But again, if it involves teachers, it's a negotiation point. So we can't just say these things are going to happen. But I think we're in a great place. One of the few things we're in a great place for because of COVID is the fact that we have multiple ways of reaching families and parents. And I think we've done a great job of soliciting information. As Doug said, you don't always get a clear consensus about what you should be doing or shouldn't be doing, even when you survey them. So you have to sort of balance things. But I do not believe we should have consistent policies about this.
So as a mom of multiple children in many schools throughout the city, I can understand the frustration in seeing that some schools do things during the day and some do them in the evening, and some have elaborate trips in 8th grade and some go closer to home. But I agree that we need to leave that up to the individual schools and the PTOs to do what's right for their constituents, for their parents and the families that they serve. I don't think that it would be feasible to put this into effect to say that every school has to handle everything the same way. I think that the PTOs and the administrators do their best in trying to serve everyone.
And the final question tonight is going to be asked by Heather.
Hello, everyone. Since the start of the school year, there have been several negative incidents that have spanned across the school levels. What do you believe the school committee should do to improve the district's response to such incidents? What can be done proactively to improve the current climate in our school district?
Hi. Yes. So I think that what we could be doing as a system is, I know we have the school security team and the administration. I think what we need to be doing is being proactive in the respect of understanding what teens are involved in at this time. I think the incidences that we had, one of them was involved with TikTok, and if we go on there and we see some of the trends and what these kids are doing, it will give us a proactive understanding of what we might be looking at coming into the school system. And so I think it's important for us to really be on top of some of the social media platforms that kids are getting onto, create our own account, pretend we're a teenager, like we did with our own kids, and pay attention to what's out there and what they're looking at. And that will give us a better understanding of maybe how to deal with that. And again, maybe on a professional development side, they can be looking at, security people can be looking at how to deal with some of these situations when they arise. I think, to be honest with you, I think the school system handled those situations pretty well. They do happen. I know that when my kids were in school, there was, bomb threats and different things that kids were doing to disrupt learning during the day. And some of these things obviously are much more dangerous for us. But I think that it's important for us as a school system to really look at these things and be proactive and learn what might be in front of teenagers at this time.
Right. So this question, I didn't prepare a response for this one because it's still ongoing in my head. We every time the superintendent has called me as a member of the school committee to tell me that something's happened and what we're doing to address it, you know, my brain starts going, how can we fix this? Could we have avoided it? How can we avoid it the next time? And you know, I think we're still trying to figure that out. Honestly, I think if there was anything, one solution, if there was one solution to the problem, we'd all be behind it. But I think Liz talks a lot about trauma and how it manifests itself. And I think, you know, we may have thought when all the kids got back that they were just going to need a big hug and everything was going to be okay. But I think that, you know, the way trauma of the last 18 months is coming out is, you know, there's some anger, there's some, you know, expectations that students haven't had in 18 months. And I think it's just going to take some time to get everyone back on the same page. I think that's what the support looks like. This is why we need to keep pivoting how we're addressing, how we're supporting our kids, going over, helping the climate in our schools, you know, going over expectations, what it means to be part of our Quincy school community, reminding kids, reminding teachers, reminding staff, reminding everyone of our values in Quincy, of being there for each other and supporting each other. And I think it's going to take a little time. We do have to keep looking at this and keep going at it, but it's ongoing in my brain all the time as to how to address this and help bring us all together as a community again.
I think the incidences at Southwest and Central Middle School deserve quick, clear, and strong district-wide responses, as well as responses from the individual schools. We also had an episode happen at North Quincy High School. You know, Tip O'Neill, the former U.S. Speaker of the House, said, hang a lantern on your problem. And what he means by that is the first thing that you should do is promptly disclose and communicate with parents and students, and you should do so early and often. If is there a problem, you need to get it out there. It was just mentioned the TikTok challenge. That is a real problem. TikTok challenge is a real problem, and we need to elevate the concern and make students aware that it's not going to be tolerated. Emily had a good suggestion at a recent school committee meeting where she suggested that we should do a parent academy on it, because I think it's going to continue to get worse. As far as the school committee, I think that we need to get apprised. We need to get timely updates. We need to understand the tone and the source of the response, and we should weigh in as to whether or not that's necessary or adequate or strong enough. You know, one of the things that I find to be a challenge is to be aware of the type and frequency of communications that is happening from all principals throughout the school district. When you have 11 elementary schools, 5 middle schools, 2 high schools, it's difficult to know exactly what that communication is. And one of the things that I asked was that we have access to all of the communications from all of the principals, whether we post it on the website or somewhere else. But it's going to be important for us to know how they respond to those things, especially before we look at school improvement plans. So I can't think of another way for us as a body to assess the strength of our principals around communication if we don't have access to what they're communicating to their students. But significant incidences that have transpired over the course of the last couple of months, both an individual school and district-wide response.
So I think our response should be more attuned to the actual situation. I think a lot of the stuff that's coming out of the superintendent's office is boilerplate templates, and it doesn't matter what incident happened at what school, we're seeing the exact same response. And it makes me feel like we are being lawyerly rather than responsive to the situation. And I think that Mr. Mulvey does a great job of protecting us and making sure students' rights and due process is followed. But I think we have to blend that with better communications coming out of the district when this happens. I was really dismayed last week when we found out we had information about graffiti in the bathrooms at one of our schools that the superintendent did not have, which means somebody in the school cleaned that up saw it and cleaned it up and didn't pass the information on, and it was very, very offensive. But when the superintendent asked me to share it with him, I was kind of appalled that this information wasn't coming up from him. So I really do understand that this is a communication problem that we have to look at. But I think we have to go back to this social emotional learning. Our kids need to be supported as they move back into school and become socialized again to school. And also, we need to start looking at what they're being exposed to. Kids in middle school can see pornography pretty clearly, pretty easily online. We need to give them the tools to mitigate that impact when they see that stuff or hear that stuff. So we need to do the social emotional learning. I feel very strongly about that. Thank you.
I feel what Tina and Emily were saying is true. I think that we need to look very carefully at what children have in front of them, what they have access to, what the trends are these days. I have many teenagers in my house, so I am up on TikTok and constantly monitoring such things. And I was honestly not shocked or surprised to see that these things were coming down the pipeline. I think that Parent Academy is a fantastic idea to help the parents understand what these children may be seeing on a daily basis that they may not be aware of. In instances like this, I am forever grateful for the school resource officers. I think that they handled some of the situations extremely well. I do agree that we need open communication with all of the schools and the principals and the superintendent, and we need to make sure that we know everything that's going on. And I also, like Emily said, don't think that a blanket approach is necessarily appropriate. I think that the punishment needs to fit the crime. I think that we need to see what the motive is. Is this child hurting in some way? Is this an outreach? Is this something that they're crying out for help? Or is this some malicious, act where they are out to hurt other students and, needs to be handled obviously with some more hard-handed actions. But in all of the instances that I've been made aware, I was pleased at how that they were handled.
Thank you for this question. I think it's an important one. So first, I think that one of the roles of school committee is setting the tone for the culture and the climate of the entire district, and having a school committee that communicates internally with each other respectfully and truthfully is one that is crucial to setting the tone of how we expect our students to treat each other. And that's something that I think we have a little bit of work to do around. I also think that we need a holistic approach across the district that creates more than just a reactive response. I think in general, QPS is a very reactive system. And I think that we need to have a more, as I've mentioned before, a vision of how do we create that sense of belonging where these kinds of things don't happen. And we proactively work towards that. We had Visions come last year and do a needs assessment for us. That was in the spring. We have heard nothing about that. And it hasn't come up that I've heard on any of the school committee meetings. Parents started reaching out in the past few weeks to find out what are the recommendations that are going to come from that. And I think it shouldn't be parents that are having to advocate for getting a report back from consultants around DEI and how we're going to be more proactive. I do think that this is a place where we could start integrating some of the restorative justice work that has started. Our teachers are not equipped yet, I don't think, to be able to use these skills and tools with these kinds of issues, but I think that's what we should be working towards, is a less punitive approach and one that restores healing and a sense of community for all of our students.
We're at the point in the night where we've answered our questions, and now it's time for closing statements. And I just want to thank everyone for their thoughtfulness in answering these questions that we had tonight, and for participating with us before we start closing statements. And Courtney, we will start back at the top and start with you.
Okay. Thanks, Kate, Ashley, and the members of Citywide for organizing and hosting tonight's event. And I want to thank everyone on the call for joining us and learning more about myself and the other candidates. There are a lot of projects that I'm really excited to continue to advocate for while I'm on the school committee. Finding a way to bring fifth graders back to Clifford Marshall and Lincoln Hancock is something I've worked tirelessly on over the last few years and something I'll continue to advocate for. Adding more challenging academic opportunities for younger students. Making sure we're continually investing in our older school buildings and grounds to provide equity for all students. I also want to improve communication and always work out to reach out to and include the voices of our families, students, teachers, and staff on every issue we tackle. And we also have a lot more work to do to make the path to receiving special education services easier to navigate. Serving on the school committee these past 8 months has been so much more than just a job to me. It's truly been an honor and a privilege to be able to speak up for my students, for your students, for our students, and to advocate for families and teachers while working to make lasting change and improvements in our school system. I'd love nothing more than the opportunity to continue doing this work, and I hope that you'll help me do that. I respectfully ask for one of your 3 votes for school committee on Tuesday, November 2nd. Thank you.
I too would like to thank Ashley and Kate and all of you at Citywide PTO and all of the people that took the time to listen tonight as well. You know, pre-pandemic, we begin every school committee meeting with a short video of pretty amazing things that were happening in our school system. It was called, you might remember it, Inspire Quincy. And as a parent, as a teacher, as a taxpayer, that's what I love to see about our school system. Now that we're back in the classroom, I can't wait to again see how our students inspire us, because rest assured they will. I hope to continue on the school committee to provide the tools, technology, the knowledge, and know-how that our students deserve. I believe that I have a unique lens into both high schools. I've spent 20 years teaching myself. I've served on a school committee over the last 4 years that's tackled some of the toughest issues in a generation. And prior to that, as a city councilor for 14 years, I was a strong supporter of public education. You have a tough choice. There are a lot of good candidates this year, but on November 2nd, in 2 weeks, I'm first on the ballot, and I again humbly ask for your vote.
So I'll go next. Yes, I really hope that I can get you to vote for me too also. I mean, one of your votes would be a pleasure and an honor. I absolutely love this work. I think I bring a very unique lens to the work. I'm the only person here who's ever taught in a public school and also been an administrator in a public school, in our public schools. So I know the district in and out, and I have worked very collaboratively with Citywide in the past and hope to continue to do that, and have had personal conversations with lots of people who are on this call now. And I'm so glad it's being recorded for the people who couldn't make it. But yes, I hope to be able to continue to do this work. I have the time, the energy, and the ability and the knowledge. So I humbly ask for one of your votes on November 2nd. Thank you.
Hello. I really feel that I have a lot to offer to school committee. I have never run for a political office before. This is nothing I ever thought that I would be doing, but I really feel that I have a lot to contribute. I think as a mom that has children all throughout the school in all different levels, elementary, middle, high school, I have a clear perspective that a lot of people could use. I think that I am very equipped to use my voice. I am not afraid to speak up for what needs to be done. And I think that the children should always be put first. And I think that I can bring a perspective that would help parents and families and open communication. And I think that I would really appreciate one of your votes on November 2nd. And I'd like to thank everyone for hosting this tonight and giving us the opportunity to be heard. Thank you.
So I believe I bring a unique perspective to school committee with 20 years of mental health experience, as well as having 2 little kids who will be in the system for quite a long time, and living with all the decisions that are made. I also think that our campaign has been a symbol of what we want to see in QPS. We have been at this since March, and created a website in the top 4 languages at QPS. We have an incredibly diverse team. We have materials in various languages. We have paid interpreters to come with us to community events so we can speak to folks in their language. We've knocked on over 6,000 doors. That's maybe why I'm feeling so tired. Been working incredibly hard for many months, and I don't even have the job yet. So you can imagine how hard I'm going to work for you when I'm on school committee and listening and learning and taking what you have to say that's important to you and your family and integrating that into how I speak up for your kids. I will not just advocate for things that are going to help my kids. They're doing okay. I'm really going to speak up and advocate for those who are most marginalized historically, most vulnerable in our community, and make sure that their voices are lifted up and heard in the highest levels of leadership in our system, because those are the voices that we really need to center with every decision that we make. I humbly ask for your vote. Don't forget, early voting starts next week, Monday through Friday, and then voting day is November 2nd. So whenever you choose to vote, I would love to have one of your 3 votes. Thank you.
I think
Am
we
I
need to
next?
switch to Tina, right?
Okay, I wasn't sure. I'm like, am I next here? So I would like to close with saying that I'm running for school committee so that I can represent students, parents, faculty, administration, and the citizens of Quincy equally. My experience as a parent, a teacher, an administrator, and a lifelong Quincy resident allows me to bring a comprehensive and fiscally sound perspective to the school committee. I'll work to ensure that all our students receive a positive and productive K-12 learning experience by working collaboratively with all the stakeholders to make this a reality. I love the city. I'm committed to education, and I believe that a strong and vibrant school system results in a strong and vibrant city. So I respectfully ask for one of your votes on November 2nd, and I hope that if I'm elected, that I will serve you, the students, and the citizens of the city well. Thank you.
Once again, I want to thank everyone for joining us, and for those tuning in. If you want to learn more about the candidates or any of the candidates, we put all their information in the chat, so please reach out to them. So just again, thank you everyone for participating, and vote, right? The most important thing for everyone paying attention gets out and votes on November 2nd.